To order. This is the September 22nd meeting of the Placer County Planning Commission. And so if I could have everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Mr. Ricucci? Mr. Brentnall? Mr. Denayo?
Here.
Mr. Sevison is absent. Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Moss?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here. Okay, so next item on the agenda is a report from the Planning Director. Michael.
Good morning. Just to update you on a couple of items that will be of importance to you. At the September 13th board meeting, the board conducted the first public hearing on the proposed redistricting of the supervisorial districts, and that will be coming back to the board for final action on the board's October 11th agenda. The board also directed staff to work with the city of Roseville regarding participation in the PCCP. The city has said that it may be interested in being a partner in the PCCP process, and so staff will be having meetings with the city over the next couple of weeks to see how that might progress. And lastly, at the September 13th board meeting, the board completed the process to allow for the annexation of the Sierra Vista specific plan area. It's located in the lower southwest corner of the city. It was part of the future study area in the county's general plan, and so that development will now be able to go forward. The commission may remember the Timberline at Auburn project. It was considered by your commission earlier this summer. Your action was appealed to the board, and after hearing public comments, the board denied that appeal and approved the project consistent with your commission's approval. Late last week, the county received a lawsuit from Ad Hoc Committee challenging the county's approval, and so we will keep you updated as that lawsuit progresses through the court system. A reminder that for your October 13th Planning Commission meeting, it will be here in Auburn, and one of the items that will be on that agenda will be the draft EIR for the Amazing Facts Church project over in Granite Bay. It will be an opportunity to receive public comments on that document. At this time, we're looking to have a special meeting in Tahoe on October 20th. We have the Homewood Mountain Resort project that's coming forward, and because of the interest in the Tahoe community, we want to have a Tahoe meeting up there. So staff will be contacting you to check on your availability for either October 20th or sometime during that week. Lastly, the October 27th Planning Commission meeting has been canceled. And I wanted to bring to your attention that this week we have two long-term employees who are retiring, Mike Wells and Charlene Daniels, both of whom have been with the county for many years. Mike in a capacity as supervising planner for the Auburn area, and more recently Mike has filled in as the environmental coordinator for the county. And Charlene has been, as a senior planner, involved in many projects, long-range advanced planning projects, especially involving the Granite Bay community. It's tough to lose two such long-term staff members, and their presence will be missed here, but we wish them well as they move forward in their retirement. That completes staff's comments. Any questions?
I was surprised to hear about Mike and Charlene. We've suffered through some things together. Specifically, Mike, I'm thinking of the Forest Hill Community Plan. And, you know, we've become pretty close with these folks, and you'll be missed. Thanks so much, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations to the retirees. Yeah. Okay, at this time, we have an opportunity for public comment on any particular item that's not on the agenda today. Is there anybody that has a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward, and I think we are in good time. And so our first item on the agenda is dealing with a proposed residence in the Alpine Meadows area, and I guess Mike is going to do kind of final one here, huh?
kind of deja vu. Used to do this a lot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is in Alpine Meadows. This is the Leininger residence. It's a request to modify the subdivision map that was approved back in 1971 to allow for a garage and entry feature to be into a setback that was established by the map. Their property is one of 70 lots that were approved in that subdivision approval in 1971. As the vicinity map shows you, the subdivision is situated on the north side of Alpine Meadows Road, off of Juniper Mountain Road, which is right here, and this is Cluster Court right there. Juniper Mountain Road is the primary access to the subdivision. On the aerial here, their parcel is outlined in red here. And one thing we can note from this is an undeveloped parcel. The parcel to the north and to the south both have residences and also across the street. So this is a vacant, undeveloped property. The lot itself is about 10,000 square feet in size and is on the downslope of the street. The topography of the project site, that's from across the street looking at the vacant property here. And this is taken, there we go. Again, this is the frontage off of Cluster Court there. That's a residence to the north that's showing there. This is the site plan that was submitted with this. The front part of the parcel, the frontage part here, the slopes exceed 30%, so it's fairly steep. And then they taper off into the 25 to 20% in this area here. There's not a lot of tree cover on this property. There's a couple pines in this corner and some pine and fir along the west boundary. What the project is that they propose constructing a new house, which is this part here, a garage, and an entry porch and entry feature to connect to the house. And the garage is located as close as they can to the street because of the steep slopes of the property and for easy access during the winter months. As I said, the final map for this subdivision was recorded with a 20-foot building setback, which we've kind of marked here, so it's on the map, in addition to two 10-foot easements. A 10-foot multi-purpose easement runs here, followed back here by a 10-foot public utility easement. There's also a 30-foot snow storage easement that's recorded. As the site plan shows, both the garage and the entry porch feature here are going to be within that recorded easement. And both the garage and the entry feature are within the 20-foot setback that's established by the zone district too. What the Leiningers are requesting is that the subdivision map be modified to allow for a 10-foot setback, this distance here, to allow for their proposed garage and porch feature. As you're aware, especially in the Tahoe area, because of the steep slopes and where they've built subdivisions there, the zoning ordinance does allow for garages and parking structures to be constructed up to the property line if the slope of the property is greater than 20% in the front setback area. And this is what's known as the automatic variance, but it doesn't apply to the entry porch or entry feature. It's only for garages and parking areas. So what the Leiningers are requesting then is the map be modified to allow for the construction in the setback on the map, and also a variance to the front setback to allow for their porch feature. This is on Juniper Mountain Road. It's one that your commission approved, I think it was in about 2005. The same type of thing, going to 0 feet here on this case. Oops, back. Oops, I guess the other one didn't make it on there. Okay. That's a similar project that had been approved in the past. Anyway, just to give you an idea of what it would look like. Staff's recommendation, the special circumstances that are applicable here to this variance would be the small size of the property, which is only 10,000 square feet, and the topography of the site, the slopes that are there. Staff's recommendation is that the commission approve the request to amend the final map and to approve a variance to allow for a front setback of 10 feet to allow for the construction of the garage and entry feature, and is subject to the findings and conditions that are in your staff report. If you have any questions?
Say, Mike, you may have just mentioned it and I missed it, but this proposal allows 20 feet for a driveway between the street and the garage?
I believe it's going to be about
Right on
26 feet is what we've measured out here. There's adequate driveway parking here for
You
vehicles.
said 26 feet?
I think it's approximately 26, yeah.
Okay. This one here looks like it's right on the street.
Yeah, the pavement and everything, they did meet it, just barely, I believe, on this one.
Okay.
Because that was certainly a discussion point at that time, too, and with all of these.
Okay. Any other questions?
The modification to the subdivision map, is that lot specific or does?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, we will ask for them to fill out a certificate of variance. We have an engineer's drawing here showing, basically, if you have the straight line, that dark line that we got dashed there will actually follow the outline of whatever improvements are being proposed, and it'll be recorded with that on there.
Anybody else needing to do this same type of thing is gonna have to come back and ask for, I mean, we're not modifying this so others can do it also?
No, this will be about the fourth that I'm aware of in this particular subdivision.
See, maybe one more question. Has the public utilities easement in effect been abandoned by the district, or?
Sarah can probably best discuss that one.
Thank you. Sarah Gilmore, Engineering and Surveying. And yes, actually, condition number 7 requires that the public utility easement be abandoned. It's in the process of being processed by the Department of Public Works, and I believe it's already on the consent agenda for the next board hearing.
Okay, so they're abandoning.
And as a part of that process, they do contact the utilities to see.
They're not abandoning it just for this project, they're abandoning that whole easement?
Just only on this parcel. This is a parcel by parcel basis.
So they don't, I guess what they're saying is they don't need that easement.
Yes. That they don't.
The public
have an
utility
interest
district doesn't need that
in
easement.
it. Correct.
Okay.
Just a further question on that. Who contacts the different public utility districts? Or is it AT&T and PG&E and the water district, all of them have to abandon it?
Correct. I don't have the list in front of me, but this PUE is described in the map as being pertinent to water, gas, sewer, and all wires and conduits, anything like that. And we have a list of the current utilities that have an interest in this subdivision, and they're all contacted, and a response is required as a part of that.
Thank you.
Just have a comment on that, on the easement. It doesn't seem logical that, and this follows up on Richard's comment, that we would abandon or ask to abandon an easement in one parcel and not if they don't need it, why don't we just proceed somehow to get the whole thing abandoned?
I'm not sure who the applicant would be for that, but this is, like you said, the 4th or 5th time we've seen this come forward on a lot-by-lot basis, and you can see how the map was probably a bit generous when it was created as far as easements.
Just maybe to add a little bit, what we usually find, I think, is most of the utilities are actually in the right-of-way and not within those 10-foot easements that are on the property. So that's typically why they're allowed to be abandoned.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Okay, is the owner of the property here? Would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, Jerome Laniger.
Step up to the microphone so we can hear you.
Yeah, Jerome Laniger, I have no comment. What I heard was what I understand is being represented and what we would like to do to continue building our home.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the public that would like to make a comment on this proposal? Seeing none, then I'll bring it back to the commission. What's your pleasure?
Well, since Larry Sevenson isn't here, I would make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the request to amend the final map and approve a variance to allow for the front property line setback at 10 feet for the garage and entry feature, subject to the CEQA map modification findings and variance findings in our staff report and the attached conditions.
Second. Okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how we doing time-wise? I think probably pretty good, huh? Well, close. Wait a minute or so before we start the next one. Okay. I think we're close enough here. I'll go ahead and kick off the next item on the agenda. And this has to do with a temporary concrete batch plant up in the Nyack area. I think we've probably heard this a couple times before. But because it's on a one-year basis, and we're hearing it again today. So Jerry Hawes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. And you're correct. I think this is probably fourth or fifth go-around with this site. This is only the second one with this firm, though. Tyker took this over last year. The request is for an extension of time for the conditional use permit that allows for the operation of a concrete batch plant on the site. If it's approved, the extension of time would allow for the continued use of the site from April 15th, 2012 until October 15th, 2012. Operations would continue possibly throughout the winter, but they won't be producing concrete at that time. As indicated in the staff report, should the applicant need additional time after October 15th next year, we would need to see a new application for a conditional use permit started up. And that's because this zone district only allows for 1 year in highway services for this type of use. It's specific. Certain zone districts will allow for 2-year temporary use permits. Some of them only allow for 1 year. This happens to be a 1-year one. This is the project site here, the cleared out area on the north side of Interstate 80. Here's the Burger King. This is the new site plan. It differs slightly from the original site plan in that this area down here is now being used as a construction or a contractor's office, a temporary office again, and this area is now being used to store modular units. Although the scope of the project has expanded slightly, none of the new uses occur on previously undisturbed areas. There are no new environmental impacts, and the project remains temporary in nature. Here are some of the images of the site. This is the concrete washout basin. As it was being constructed, it looks a little different than that now. These are a system of conveyors of the raw material that you see in piles down here, the aggregate and the base. And these, I believe, are water towers, if it's important. This is the American flag you see when you're coming back from Tahoe on Interstate 80. As the changes to the site are not significant and the project substantially conforms to the original approval, staff recommends approval of this extension time request, and that's subject to the findings and to the conditions of approval as modified that are attached to the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Not a question, but I assume then that this is because the highway construction is not going to be finished before this winter then?
I think we knew, yeah, they knew ahead of time it was going to take a few more years, and
Yeah, I just came through there not
it seems
too long.
painfully slow for all of us.
I just came through there recently with a little trailer, and yeah, it's kind of a still still a kind of, you have to be really careful through there. So I guess you're going to have to travel through there during the winter on those same kind of diversions and stuff?
Yeah, Adam may know a little bit more about that, but I'm sure that the road puts your trailer to the test if you're in certain lanes at certain in certain locations.
Going to stay the same, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Nothing else?
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, Jerry. Is anybody from Caltrans or proponent here that would like to say anything? Not seeing anybody raise a hand, so with that, huh? Oh, excuse me, yeah. Any comments from the public on this? Okay, again, not seeing anything, we'll bring it back to the commission. What's your pleasure?
Well, once again, since Larry's not here, I will go ahead and make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the requested extension of time for the Nyack temporary concrete batch plant based upon the findings in our staff report and the modified conditions of approval attached thereto.
Okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, well, we have one more item on the agenda, and it's a 10:30 item. And right now it's 10:25, and so in case somebody is madly racing to catch us here, we'll wait for 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I will excuse myself from this next item, so.
Okay, yeah, Ken is a property owner, so we'll wish him adieu. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started again. This next proposal is a proposal that is dealing with actually segmenting what has been approved in the past is the West Placer Specific Plan area. And so Melanie Jackson is going to make a presentation to us.
Thank you. Good morning. The item before you is an amendment to the Placer Vineyard Specific Plan and an amended and restated development agreement. The applicant is requesting approval by the Board of Supervisors of amendments to the Placer Vineyard Specific Plan and amendments to the development agreements associated with the Placer Vineyard Specific Plan. The Placer Vineyard Specific Plan is located in unincorporated southwestern Placer County, bounded by the north by Basin Road, and on the south by Sacramento-Placer County line, on the west by Sutter-Placer County line and Pleasant Grove Road, and on the east by Dry Creek and Walerga Road. The PVSP project area contains approximately 5,230 gross acres with an east-west length of approximately 6 miles. The project area encompasses approximately 8 square miles in area. The Placer Vineyard Specific Plan provides direction for development of 5,230 acres in the southwestern Placer County, and it includes a mix of residential, commercial, retail, office, mixed use, and public facilities. The proposed amendments to the specific plan and development agreements are to allow for phasing of the project, including the construction of backbone infrastructure, rather than requiring core backbone infrastructure be fully constructed with the initial development of the project. Under the proposed revisions, the developers of individual projects within the plan area could submit applications for approval of development phases within portions of the specific plan and propose construction of the portion of the necessary backbone infrastructure subject to county approval. So basically, they can construct a portion of the project without having to do all the backbone, which would be the major streets leading up to the project. In 2007, the Board of Supervisors certified the final environmental impact report for the Placer Vineyard Specific Plan. With the amendment of the specific plan and the development agreements, it was necessary to prepare an addendum to the EIR. The proposed revisions to the PVSP would not alter any of the conclusions of the certified EIR regarding the significance of environmental impacts. The proposed amendments to the original development agreements and to the PVSP all pertain to the timing of construction of infrastructure and phasing of the project, and not the type, location, intensity, or density of land use. They allow additional flexibility in timing while not reducing development standards. Staff brought the Placer Vineyards amendments before the West Placer MAC on September 14, 2011 as an action item. The West Placer MAC took action, unanimous action, to recommend approval of the project, and they wanted a contingency that the approval be based on a balanced phasing of the project. Balanced phasing essentially means that as the project is constructed, the uses implemented will be varied so as to avoid a concentration of one type of use. Staff would like to recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that, number one, the supervisors adopt the addendum to the previously certified Placer Vineyards EIR. Number two, approve the proposed amendment Placer Vineyards Specific Plan. And number three, approve the amended and restated development agreement for the Placer Vineyards Specific Plan in the form of the attachment that's shown in attachment 4 and based on the findings contained in the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Questions?
How do you determine how much, I would say in this case, a residential can be built before some commercial has to be built?
I cannot answer that question.
The proposal before your board today doesn't affect any of the previously approved land uses for this project. From the very beginning, this project was allowed to develop in accordance with the project or the property owner's desires out there. So in terms of balance, that's going to be a market force that determines the balance out there at the end of the day.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood. I thought there was something in there about that certain kinds of development couldn't be made in total without others being made as well.
No, apparently the MAC recommended that there be some provision for balancing the development out there. But because of the number of property owners out there and the manner in which the project was approved, it's really subject to the property owners coming in at the time they believe that they can proceed with their development. And some of the properties have commercial with the residential, so it will depend on which properties come in as to how the actual ultimate balance of uses develops. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the market forces that determine how that occurs.
To that, in effect, that you could, just for, as a hypothetical, all these could be all commercial and retail and no residential ever built at all, if the people who own the property decide that that's what it's going to be.
Well, I guess in theory that could happen, again, because it's the property owners that determine when they come in and submit a development phase. And then they will propose within that development phase what aspect of the project they propose to develop.
But the allowable uses within the phases hasn't changed.
Correct. None of the density, none of the uses, none of the types of uses or location of any of those uses has changed. All this does is changes the phasing of ultimate construction of the infrastructure from, as you recall, there was $300 million worth of core backbone infrastructure which was required with the first development. Now that infrastructure will be built as the development comes in to serve that development and to hook into the remainder of the project. So it does not change any of the previous uses, the previous locations of uses or types of uses. So in terms of how the development will occur, this doesn't change how the development will occur as opposed to when it was originally approved.
Just the order in which it might have.
It may not even change that, again. It all depends on who comes in first. All this does is changes the amount of infrastructure that's required when the development first comes in.
Jerry, go ahead.
I'm not sure that, as a commissioner, I really care what the phasing is, Scott. This is a function of the proponent, and it's their money at risk. But my concern is, does this affect at all any responsibility that the county might have if the property were to go and, hold your ears, bankrupt? I'm thinking in terms of Bickford Ranch, the stories that arose out of Winchester. I hope they succeed and make a healthy profit. But I also have to look out after the county's interest and make sure that if something goes terribly wrong, we're not left with ditches out there, people who are stranded on an island and can't get infrastructure, something to that effect. Does this affect that at all?
I don't believe so, Jerry, and the reason being is each phase comes in, the infrastructure that's required to serve that phase will be reviewed, and we would put the same safeguards in for the construction of that infrastructure, which we would for any other project, so that there would be performance requirements and
there bonds
and things like that for the infrastructure.
Okay.
So, any project obviously is subject to economic vagaries. We can't predict that, but we would condition this the same way we would any other project, so that if they start the infrastructure, it will be conditioned to require that be constructed.
Thank you.
See, Melanie, I have maybe a question for you here. It's not a hard question, I don't think. It just kind of displays my ignorance, maybe. You mentioned that there's an overall development agreement, and I think I was reading that as the property owners come forward, then they have to apply for an individual development agreement. Is that what I'm reading right?
I believe there are several development agreements.
There were originally 21 development agreements with each of the property owners out there, the participating property owners. There will be 21 individual development agreements. They are identical in terms of the requirements, however. So each developer has the full requirements in the development agreement. And
so they'll have to apply, I guess, when they come forward for that, or I guess a revised development agreement is what they're working towards?
That's what they're applying for right now, and we'll take to the Board of Supervisors in the form that's in your packet. That's the development agreement we will take to the board.
So what do the individual property owners do when they want to get started?
A property owner would come in and propose a development phase, and that development phase then would show which portion of the specific plan was to be developed, proposed to be developed, and it would include which portion of the infrastructure was required in order to serve that portion of the plan and hook in to the infrastructure for the rest of the project so that it was adequate if another project comes in.
Okay.
And there could be, in fact, frankly, more than one developer come in at a time. There could be 2 or 3 phases, and then they'd all be fit together.
The first ones on the block are likely to have to pay a lot more money than the other ones, right?
Just like the previous project, the first one's going to be a lot more expensive, correct?
Okay. Any other questions?
Not a question. I did attend the MAC meeting, so this is my second time at this, along with, and so I appreciate the presentation over there. And actually, I brought up some of these issues about phasing and about balance. And sprinkled throughout all these development agreements, this Board of Supervisors has a lot of discretion on the way it's reworded on what they can approve. In other words, let's say some area is being developed, but has a traffic impact on some other one that should be developed first, let's say, just from a logical standpoint. They have a lot of discretion in the way that this thing is being rewritten as far as their approval process, making sure that all the environmental issues aren't made worse than the original plan, which said all the infrastructure had to be in there at one time. So I think it would, and I did meet with a couple of developers' representatives in the meantime too, and I think we will get a balanced growth with that understanding. But that was what the MAC wanted. They didn't want all residential, all commercial, and probably won't be, because probably going to have to develop from one end, not here, 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 and here, because the infrastructure won't be there. So, and so as you saw the land use plan, it does have, let's say if you just develop from one end to the other, it does have the different colors on there which represent the different land uses. So I think it will have a balanced approach, but that's what the MAC's main concern was.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Okay, would the applicants like to make a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Tim Tarrin. I represent the Placer Vineyard Owners Group. With me today is the project manager, Kent McDiarmid. Kent and I have been working on this along with the owners with staff since November of 2010, and we very much appreciate the staff's good work with us. They've been very good to work with, and there's been a lot of work that's been done over the past 10 months to get to you today, but we're very pleased to be here. Maybe I can recharacterize this a little bit and maybe shed some light on it. The original approved project was a single-phase project. It required all infrastructure for the entire 14,000 units to be 12,000, 14,000 to be installed upfront, and then development could happen anywhere within the plan area, way out west, east, middle. It could actually have gone in any pattern. What this proposal does is, while it's more economically prudent, obviously I think you can understand why that would be, it allows one or more developer or landowners to come to the county and ask for approval of a phase, which is less than the entire project. And the infrastructure for that phase will then be reviewed by the county, and hopefully that phase would be approved. And then that phase and only that phase would be able to go forward unless and until one or more other phases came forward. This, we think, will allow for a more logical and orderly pattern of development, incremental, instead of here, there, and everywhere within the plan area. Obviously, it allows us, from an investment standpoint, not to invest in all of the infrastructure at one time, which is economically infeasible, but to invest in the infrastructure that's needed and have it there when it's needed. So we think actually it will result in a more logical and orderly pattern of development over time. And I know that packet is really thick, but we know this language because we parsed every word of it. In section 3512 of the revised development agreement, and this is, I appreciate Commissioner Ricucci's comments because I think he was perhaps alluding to this language. It says, approval of a development phase shall be subject to the determination by the county that the development phase presents a logical and reasonable pattern for development within the plan area, that the phasing plan will adequately mitigate the impacts of development of the development phase, and can be served by phased improvements consistent with a specific plan and the EIR. So what that really does is that gives the county the discretion to look at each phase and, among other things, balance. I mean, if balance becomes an issue, then that would be something that the county could address then. But it also obviously will address things like what infrastructure is needed to avoid conflicts with other development, existing development, traffic need, impact issues, etc. So we're very excited about this amendment because we think it's going to make the whole project more feasible and actually better in the end. So I don't have a lot more to add. I did want to add just those few comments. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and of course we hope you support the staff recommendation today. Thank you.
I have a comment for Tim. Having lived through this with you guys,
yes,
and the EIR and the draft EIR, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection was that we had thought about suggesting to you that it be phased in the first place, and you guys wanted it all as one.
Well,
I remember that discussion.
Yeah, no, I have a little different recollection, and I think that, fortunately or unfortunately, the project was approved in what I call the go-go days, the days when anything seemed possible because homes were selling for $500,000 and $600,000 apiece, and mortgages were plentiful, and we all know what happened as a result of that. But I think the county really felt more comfortable at that time saying, look, let's get all the infrastructure up front. And frankly, we thought, while that was a big hurdle to get over, we thought in those days we probably could finance that because there were Lehman Brothers out there who were willing to loan you $300 million and be a partner in the project, so to speak. Those days are gone. And so we are just forced to do things more incrementally. But as we rethought this, and as we thought this incremental approach through with staff, we really also did feel that it would, if we continue to give the county the discretion it needed to review these phases, which we think is just absolutely necessary, whether it's politically necessary or from a planning standpoint necessary, it's necessary, that it would result actually in more logical and orderly development. And that we wouldn't get, if we had all the infrastructure up front, you might have some development over on the west side, you might have a little over in the east, you might have one piece in the middle, and not much in between. It would look pretty funny for a long, long time until it all filled in, which is over a long period of time. This, we think, will probably mean things will start at one end and most logically proceed from one end to the other, because the cost of extending infrastructure out ahead and leapfrogging properties is probably not realistic.
So would it be fair to say that you believe that this balanced phasing, as the MAC described it, would kind of occur by default because of the market forces?
It will. Thank you. It will, but what we opposed and would oppose is any fixed ratio, like saying, okay, when you build 500 houses, you have to have this much commercial, because the market doesn't work that way. Bel Air today may have a position where they won't build a supermarket until you have 3,000 houses. If the economy is more robust and positive, they might change and it might only be 2,000. But it's a dynamic situation that the market drives. And so once we have enough rooftops out there, there will be commercial that wants to be there. They will want to be there. We won't have to go knocking on their door. But we just can't tell you, is that at 500 houses, 1,000 houses, or what? Same is true, just an auto parts store or a beauty shop or whatever. They make those decisions. It's very dynamic, and we have to let the market work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question for Mr. Tarrant.
Yes.
I know when the project was being handled here and at the Board of Supervisors in 2007 and before, this whole issue of smart growth and the other alternate plan was there, which increased the density about 50%.
100%.
Is there under this
50%? You're right.
Whatever. And under this revised, is there opportunities for plan revision? Not that I'm suggesting they should be revised. I'm just saying would there be opportunities that if it looked like it was the right thing to do at the time for property owners to propose to the
that's
county,
an interesting question.
Revision?
As you know, I think you know, at the time this project was approved, there were two plans in front of the board,
right.
this density and one which was about 50% denser.
Mm-hmm.
The board did not approve that higher density plan.
That's right.
Specifically rejected it. As property owners come forward, if they have individual plans that they feel in the marketplace warrant higher density, any landowner can at any time
Right.
ask for an amendment of the specific plan and their specific property in a phase to build a higher density project. But that will, right now, our expectation is that's going to be just, that would be a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Not a plan-wide.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else from the public that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. What's your pleasure? Either discussion or a motion, whatever.
Well, let's discuss a little bit.
Okay.
I don't object to the phasing. I really think that's something that should be within their control. This idea of balanced phasing, I don't want to impose any ratio, as Tim said, upon them. I think the market forces ought to set it, and that we should just stay out of that.
Well, I agree. And at the MAC, that no one, I don't think at that time mentioned any kind of ratios. I think Mr. Terran's the only one that's mentioned a ratio. But it was, they just want that on the record, and quite frankly, I'd like to, I'm on the record, it's in the minutes. In other words, not as another requirement. They just put that out, and I think it's been adequately discussed that it probably will occur that way just by, if it starts at one end, you can see it's going to cross various colors on the map. So it's probably going to be that way anyway, but they just wanted to express it as a general concern. No one at the MAC said that they wanted a ratio or there was a trigger point or anything like that. That was just, it's in there just as a comment for balanced growth.
Okay. Any other discussion points?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if there's no additional discussion, then I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would move that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they adopt, excuse me, the addendum to the previously certified Placer Vineyards EIR, which is included as attachment 1 to our staff report. They approve the proposed amended Placer Vineyards specific plan as shown in the attachment to our staff report, and approve the amendment and restated development agreement for the Placer Vineyards specific plan in the form shown in attachment 4 to our staff report, subject to the CEQA findings, the specific plan findings and development agreement findings contained in our staff report.
Second.
Are there modified conditions, Scott? No. Okay.
Okay, well, with that, then I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, let's see, unless there's something for the good of the order, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.